Good morning and welcome to the lecture series on karma and science. For a long, subject of karma was considered to be a theoretical one till recently when scientific exploration have started giving it a physical shape. I'll make you conversant with the scientific aspect of the karma. In my 5 lecture series, I had devoted the first 2 lectures to the anatomical and functional background of the nervous system, followed by 2 lectures on sensations and perceptions. The last one is on higher functions in humans, such as mind, cognition, as related to the karmas. In today's deliberation, I'll take you along with the intricacies of the anatomical or structural considerations in the brain and nervous system, and second, the physiological or functional consideration in a simple language to be understood by you. Nervous system, including brain, is a highly developed organ in human being, and it controls and directs all actions and the functions of the body. Unfortunately, philosophers and the early scientists have failed to recognize its worth. You have been taught in the previous lectures that the karma and the rebirth are the two most important presuppositions of almost all schools of Indian philosophy. Thus, we cannot go away with the considering the karma in the both philosophical as well as in the scientific language. My today's aim would be to appraise you of the beauty of this marvelous structure, how the brain and mind gets connected in between them and with the karmas, and how learning takes place and where it is stored, whether for this birth or for the future births. The classical Jain doctrine revolves around soul, mind, and body. The philosophical concept regards these three entities as different and independent subjects or the topics. Science is trying to explain them one as a continuum of natural processes. Science considers brain as an important interface between the mind and the body. The current scientific research has conclusively proved it. Science has now established that the brain and nervous system is an important interface between the mind and the body. The mind and the body cannot work or cannot function without the healthy and the effective brain. We have learnt a lot in the last more than 50 years about memory, neurotransmitters, cognition, mental phenomena, consciousness, neurobiology, and many other important facets of emotions and the behavioral science. While the human body has been extensively studied and now everyone is very well conversant with it, the soul cannot be quantified with the current scientific gadgets and it is not often mentioned in the science. However, the mind and brain is an area of active research in the science and in all the humanities. What important point or the difference with the philosophical philosophical science is that they are not separate compartment, they work in unison. From the very rudimentary nervous system, which is functioning in the unicellular organism like the amoeba and paramecium, human nervous system has evolved immensely since then. It is housed in a well protected bony cage of its skull and spine. Inside the skull and spine, it is lined with the three membranes, and between the dura and arachnoid matter, there is a fluid layer which is called cerebrospinal fluid or better known as CSF. CSF not only questions the brain, it provides nourishment for tissues and act as an internal channel for chemical communication. The conventional nervous system is divided into the two portions, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is composed of the brain and the spinal cord, whereas peripheral nervous system, these are smaller branches of the nerve which comes out of the spinal cord and the brain stem and the brain stem in the brain stem, and from there they communicate with the rest of the body. They not only conduct the order of the brain, but they provide information to the brain. In addition, it includes autonomic nervous system, which controls the vital functioning such as breathing, digestion, heart rate, and secretions of the hormones, and many more we will see in the due course. For centuries, scientists and philosophers have been fascinated by the brain, but until recently they viewed it as nearly incomprehensible. In earlier period, heart was considered as a seat of intelligence both in the philosophy and in science. Even current public perception, heart is taken as a seat of emotions. Dil mein dard hota hai, one of the common phrases. In earlier period, contrast to that one, now we know that brain is the essence of the mind and the possibility of the soul. And it is also the seat of intelligence, creativity, emotion, and memories. All our conscious and unconscious perceptions are filtered, altered, analyzed, and organized by a gigantic symphony of neuronal players, and then they are distributed to all parts of the body and other organs via nerve impulses and biochemical messengers. Structurally, the brain is the center of human nervous system, is a highly complex organ that no computer can yet match. It has virtually unlimited power to function. It is very soft and delicate if we handle it. It slips in our hand. It's an organ of 1300 to 1400 grams, or roughly 2% of the total body weight. It contains 100 billion nerve cells and is one of the largest organ in the human body. The brain of an adult human is made up of more than 100 billion units, neurons, and they communicate each other by at least 1,000, extending to 10,000 connections or the synapses. Thus, the total interconnections within the brain neurons is in the ratio of 10 to 15. Another important component of the brain is that it is highly metabolic organ of the body. Their essential nutrients are oxygen and glucose. Although brain compose, as we have seen above, 2% of total body weight, it utilizes about 1/5 of the total oxygen or the blood flow which is there for the body. Thus 2% against the 20%. See the amount of metabolic activity going within the brain. Glial cells or the supporting cells in the brain, they are 10 to 50 times more than the number of neurons. Till recently, we were ignorant about their role. Now science is exploring their role in emotion, memory, and all functionings. Perhaps they have got a very big role to play. This PPT tells you that comparing the brain and muscles, there is a quite difference. Brain is very soft and delicate in consistency and extremely slimy. on handling. It floats in the hand. Brain, uh, the water content of the brain and muscles are almost identical in the tune of 75 to 78%. Brain has a high lipid content of 10 to 12%, approximately more twice than that of muscles. Contrasting to this, protein content of muscles in the tune of 18 to 20% is higher than that of muscle than the brain in the tune of 2 to 3 times. Can we conclude that the lipids are more involved in cognition and proteins with more motor power? It's pertinent to conclude that lipids are an essential ingredient and one should not carry away with the current myth of blaming fat for every ills. With the fat content of more than 10%, brain is the fattest organ in the body. The exterior of the brain, also known as the cortical region, is thrown into number of creases and unfolding, which are termed as fissures and sulci. These separate the surface of the brain into number of irregular eminences known as gyri or convolutions. The deep fold and the wrinkles in the brain increases its surface area and also supports its complexity. Anatomically, the brain is divided into hindbrain, a small midbrain, and a very large forebrain. Its important constituents are cerebral hemispheres, diencephalon, cerebellum, and brainstem. The lower extension of the brain, which connects to the spinal cord, is known as hindbrain. It consists of medulla oblongata, pons, and the midbrain. While midbrain handles the body movements related to the vision and hearing, that is the vestibular control, motor control of all the movements, sleep, wake and arousal cycles, temperature regulations, and many autonomic functions. Pons, a bridge between the brain and the cerebellum and spinal cord, handles unconscious processes and the jobs, such as sleep, wake cycle, and breathing. Nuclei in the pons concern chewing, sensations of the head and face, regulate eyeball movements, conduct impulses related to taste, salivation, and facial expression. It also modulates the state of body equilibrium. Medulla oblongata is involved in many important functions which are vital for our life, such as regulation of the heart rate, blood pressure, respiration, swallowing, vomiting, coughing, and sneezing. Coming to the other portion of the hindbrain, the cerebellum, is also known as the little brain, which is attached to the brain stem by the three peduncles or the bridges. Though it accounts for 10% of the brain weight, its neuronal population is 80% of the total neurons in the brain. Thus, we can make out the importance of this organ. However, science is yet to explore its full capability. It controls and coordinates muscle movements, including the fine movements, eye movements, maintain postural and balances, and coordinate for skill and repetitive movements. Thus, we are very well conversant with the motor functions of the cerebellum. We are now exploring its role in memory, emotions, timing, eh, sensory discrimination, and many higher functions. Perhaps we will get a bigger answer in the coming years to come. Cerebrum is the largest portion of the brain, accounting for 83% of total mass. The outermost layer or surface of the cerebrum is composed of 2 to 4 millimeter thick gray matter or cell bodies. It is also referred to as cerebral cortex. Beneath the cortex lies the cerebral white matter having the fibers which are white because of the myelin. Each cerebral hemisphere is further divided into the lobes, which are named for the skull bone overlying them, namely frontal lobe, occipital lobe, temporal lobe, and parietal lobe. Frontal lobe is the largest of all lobes, accounting for more than 40% of the lobes. It concerns with the motor and social behavior. The anterior portion of the frontal lobe is called the prefrontal cortex. The main frontal lobe, in addition to the motor and the motor functions, have got the main functions related to the speech, whereas the prefrontal cortex is related to the higher mental functions or the cognitive functions and determination of the personality. It is responsible for sustaining attention span, selection of behavior, impulse control, mood control, behavior, and skills. It is also involved in formulating goal, time management, problem solving, cerebral thinking or critical thinking, forward thinking, ability to feel and express emotions. It influences or it suppresses the limbic system, particularly the aggression of the amygdala, empathy, internal supervision, judgment, behavior. So, in total, it is known as the executive control center of the brain. Parietal lobe is attached to the frontal lobe as correspond to the exact top of our head. It supports the perceptions of our body and its surrounding in the space. It is also related to process of sensory information, information on limb position, and many more. Current scientific evidence suggests that meditation results in suppression of parietal lobe functions and individual attains a state of no time and no place. Temporal lobe, located on the sides, processes information related to the hearing and the audition. It also has got a it also analyzes the information related to the smell, taste. It contains area that provide language, memory, emotional stability, and socialization. Occipital lobe is situated at the back of our head and it is responsible for processing visual information and link it to the images stored in our memory. Thus we can see cerebrum is the highest developed organ in the animal kingdom. And man has got the highest kingdom. In addition to the cerebral cortex, on the surface, there are many important structures of the brain. To enumerate and elaborate on them is beyond the scope of the present lecture, but I would like to tell you on about four of them, namely thalamus, hypothalamus, pituitary, and pineal glands. Thalamus are the thalami, they are two oval masses of grey matter along the lateral wall of the third ventricle. It serves as a relay station for almost all informations that comes and goes to the cortex. Hypothalamus is a very small structure of about 5 to 6 centimeter cubic centimeter. It has an important component which controls mind over body phenomena and regulates sleep-wake cycle and many biological rhythms. It is crucial to homeostatic regulation and is a principal site for regulating the behavior and essential to the survival of the individual and the species. It also integrates and controls the autonomic nervous system that is responsible and translating our emotional state into the physical feeling of relaxation or the tension. It also has got a strong control over the emotions, hunger, thirst, and lower glands like pituitary, temperature, sexual behavior. Pituitary is a gland which is also called the master gland or master of orchestra, as it controls all endocrine glands in the body. It is connected and controlled by the hypothalamus. It secretes hormone that controls sexual development, promote bone and muscle growth, respond to stress, and fight disease. Pineal gland is located deep in the brain in the middle. It helps in regulating body's internal clock and circadian rhythm by secreting melatonin. It has got some role in the sexual development as well. However, it involutes with the advancing age, though religious literature puts pineal gland as the highest seat of brain and the spiritual gain. Scientific evidence doesn't support this contention. Another important structure in the brain is the limbic system or limbic cortex. It consists of the hippocampus and amygdala also. It has got important roles in the emotional state such as pain, pleasure, anger, rage, fear, sorrow, sexual feeling, docility, and affections. Thus, it is also termed as visceral or emotional brain. Amygdala is involved in many brain functions, including anger, fear, sexual responses, learning, and memory. Traditionally, amygdala has been linked to the violent tendencies and behavior. In a human, its expression is suppressed by the prefrontal cortex. It has got crucial role in meditation and control of major emotions like friendship, love, rage, and aggression. Hippocampus functions on work in converting short-term memory into long-term memory. Ultimately, the hippocampus stores in memories that are of emotional and motivational significance also. The other component of brain which is very important are the association areas or association cortices. The cerebral cortex contains three kinds of functional areas: motor areas, sensory areas, and association areas. They have not been assigned with any particular function. They integrate the functions or the input from other primary cortices. Association cortices thus get input from multiple sensory areas and memories for complex processing to generate behavior and action. It's the association cortex which makes an animal higher in the kingdom. It is concluded that increase in association area is associated with the higher intelligence. When I was in my neurology training 35 years ago, I was taught that the many areas of the brain are silent areas, means they have not been assigned any functions. Little did I realize at that time that there is nothing silent in the in universe or in the nature. These are the areas which are functionally more important than the primary sensory, motor, or visual cortexes. These are in term is now we know they are association areas or association cortices. The various parts of the cerebral cortex allotted to different functions are not uniform. They are in proportion to their functional importance. You can see from this diagram that areas for the hand and mouth, including tongue, is quite large compared to that of trunk and lower limbs. In hands, we as a human are blessed with an independent thumb not available to any other species in animal kingdom. This capability provides us the, the the fine work and the writing. Similarly, humans have unique quality of language production and perception. Apart from motor and sensory areas, we have a large areas in the brain devoted to social behavior, emotions, and intelligence. Like our body, the brain is also divided into the two halves, right and the left. However, they are not identical or symmetrical to the body parts. It is the right side of the body which is being controlled by the left half of the brain and vice versa. The hemisphere communicates with each other with the thick tract of the nerves called the corpus callosum. In general, messages to and from one side of the body are usually handled by the opposite side of the brain. Not all functions of the hemispheres are shared. In general, the left hemisphere controls speech, comprehension, arithmetic, writing. Thus, it is also labeled as logical brain. In 1960, this term was introduced that this logical brain is the dominant brain. Whether it's true or not is a point for discussion. The right hemisphere controls creativity, spatial ability, artistic and musical skills. It is mainly concerned with the non-verbal task. The left hemisphere is dominant for hand use and language in about 92% of our population. Current scientific evidence suggests that the right hemisphere is the creative brain and the left hemisphere is the calculative or the logical brain. Spinal cord, an important component and the primitive component of the nervous system, together with the brain or the cerebral hemisphere, it makes up the central nervous system. It's a long, thin, tubular structure which begins at the level of occipital lobe at our back, occipital bone at the back, and as a continuum of the medulla oblongata from the brain, extend down to the space between the first and second lumbar vertebrae. It's around 45 centimeter long in men and around 43 centimeter long in women. It is encased in vertebral column. Its primary functions are transmissions of neural signals between the brain and rest of the body through 31 pairs of the nerves which are called peripheral nerves. The spinal cord has three major functions as a conduit for motor information which travels down from the brain to the spinal cord and to the rest of the body, conduit for sensory informations in the reverse direction, and finally as a center for coordinating certain local reflexes. In mythological and religious literature, Kundalini is described as being coiled up at the base of the spine, Muladhara Chakra, between the rectum and the umbilicus. This is description of many other chakra in spinal cord also. However, neuroscientists have not substantiated it and they could be more symbolic or philosophical entities rather than the true structural component. We feel that more research is needed before arriving at a concluding remark. Another important aspect of the brain is the autonomic nervous system. It is involved with the self-governing or automatic regulation of three important aspects of the body, namely smooth muscles, cardiac muscles, and the glands of the respiratory, circulatory, digestive, and urogenital system. The autonomic nervous system has a reciprocal effect on the internal secretions of the gland. Two antagonistic and anatomically separate systems comprise the autonomic nervous system. On the left, which you see in the red color, are the sympathetic nervous system. On the right, which is with the green, are the parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system stimulates the heart and inhibits the digestive system during the moment of danger, and it is the area or the system which is meant for the fight or the flight. It results in an increase in blood pressure, pulse, respiration, and it inhibits digestion, dilates the pupil. The parasympathetic nervous system, in contrast, produces the opposite effect. It slows down to conserve the energy. It prepares the organism for feeding, digestion, regeneration, and the rest. It results in the reduction in the blood pressure, pulse, metabolism, respiration, and it augments the digestion. Thus, autonomic nervous system has got important functions. In meditation, it has been postulated that parasympathetic system takes an overstep over the sympathetic system, which is there to augment the activity of the human being, whereas the parasympathetic conserves the energy to take you to the higher centers. Cellular structures, a small word. The neurons are the largest cells in the body, and they are capable of transmitting impulses up to 100 meters per second, while brain and the mind is the seat of pain perception. Surprisingly, brain itself is devoid of any pain processes. There are two types of the cells. One is the neurons and another is the glial cells. Neurons, a primary functional unit, and all sensations, movement, thoughts, memory, and feelings are the result of signals that pass through or produced by the neurons. The brain is made up of billions of the nerve cells. Neuron possess a very high rate of metabolism, requiring a constant supply of nutrients and the oxygen. It consists of three structures: shell body, dendrites, which you are seeing as a branching pattern on the left side, and an axon with a single axon which is there to communicate or to transmit the impulses. The axon is a long fiber that transmits messages from the one cell body to the dendrites of other cells, neurons, or the body tissues such as muscles. In contrast, the dendrite is the Greek name for tree, branch out from the soma or the body, resembling branches of a tree. They are short fibers that receive information from other neurons and relay them also to the other neurons. Glial cells or supporting cells provide neurons with the nourishment, protection, and structural support. They are about 10 to 50 times more than the glia. Their functions are being explored in greater detail by the science. The transmission of impulses in the nervous system occurs through the two distinct modes, namely electrical and biochemical. Along the nerve fibers, be it cell bodies, axons, or dendrites. It is the electrical current which carries the messages. However, at the junction of adjacent communicating neurons, as you see in the adjacent diagram, it occurs with the help of chemicals better known as neurotransmitters. When an electrical current travels at the end of axons, it triggers release of molecules which fits into the gap known as synaptic gap. The neurotransmitter centers either excite the neurotransmitters can be either excitatory, such as acetylcholine, epinephrine, and norepinephrine, or they can be inhibitory in nature, such as gamma aminobutyric acid, popularly known as GABA, glycine, dopamine, serotonin, and endogenous opioids. Some of the neuropeptides, such as opioids and endorphins and substance P, are more than 200 times more powerful than the conventional morphine known to us. Other categories of chemical transmitters at neurotransmitters and are hormones and neuromodulators. In the concluding part of my talk, I'll be taking you shortly on how the brain and the nervous system functions. It receives an inputs, interprets the information from outside the world and the inner self through the five senses, five external senses, and the multiple internal senses. We'll be talking in the next series. Thus, it provides the information about the internal and external environment to the brain, where they are processed, they are coordinated, integrated, analyzed, and processed based on the memory and the experience in the past. And it plans a function or the responses. Whether they are, whatever the main thing is, that they generate the actions, executions, as per the appropriateness or the requirement. Messages within the brain are carried along pathways. Messages can travel from one gyrus to another gyrus, from one lobe to another lobe, from one side of the brain to other side, and the structures deep in the brain to the cortex or the superficial, like thalamus and the hypothalamus. Apart from the movement and locomotion, the brain is the chief center for all mental activities, including generation of new thoughts, learning, memory, emotions, along with the state of consciousness. The trillions of the cells in the human body do not function independently. They must work together to maintain a homeostatic and the holistic balance of the body. The essential functioning of the brain and related nervous tissue revolves around the three basic steps which we have already highlighted above. This is akin to what we perceive while operating a computer: input, processor, and execution. However, the beauty of the brain over the computer is that there is online monitoring and changes in the plan every miniature of the second. Thus, this is the brain which has got a tremendous and no computer can even match till today. Now, to conclude, we have gone through a brief account of the structures of the brain, various constituents, and its functioning. We have seen that the brain works at a tremendous speed and very accurately. It controls and guides all our bodily functions and is an important interface between the mind and body. This has got a correcting power, a very it functions both in the body needs, external needs, environmental needs, and the psychological needs. There is an utmost need that the rich knowledge acquired by the science should be amalgamated with the ancient philosophical knowledge so that we can get a better picture of the situation, and also it can be accepted by the lay public thoroughly. Thanks a lot for the. I have raised many difficult terms. I have elaborated on many of the things which are not familiar with to you. Thus, there are going to be many confusions in your own mind, and it is now your turn to put on the questions and get them clarified. Again, thanks a lot.